I'm reading from Siman Taf Lamed Zayin in Shulchan Aruch. Says Hasocher Bait Mechavero on Yud Dalet. So it's Erev Pesach, and you rent the guy's house. Ve'eno yodeh imhu baduk. You don't know if the house was properly checked for chametz. So it's Yud Dalet. Erev Pesach. Imhu ba'ir. So if the owner of the house is in the city, right? Now I guess the truth is, it would be very different today, because even if the guy was not in the city, you could ask him about, text them or something, right? Did you check your house for, okay. Didn't have the same communications as we have today. Surely, in Badka, you can ask him, meaning, Ruvain, did you do the chametz last night on Nugim Balai like you were supposed to? What about if the guy is out of town?
You can assume.
V'im eino ba'ir, chezkato badu, which is obviously connected to our Gemara. Chazaka, that is badug. Umevatlo, b'libo v'dayo. So that's the language of Shulchan Aruch is, listen, better to ask him, because that concept is called im efshar levarer. It's always better if you're able to mevarer. So I could rely on a chazaka. So again, lechatchila, what should you do? Be mevarer. Pick up the phone, send him a text message, go ask him. Right? I don't know, send a carrier pigeon, whatever it is, right? Whatever method of communication you want. If the guy's around, investigate. Or if he's not around, send him a text. Did you do b'dikat chametz or not? But what if you can't? Okay. No, nishgaferlach. Why? Because im efshar levara. If you're able to mevara, be mevara. If you're not able to mevara, no problem. Chezkato batu, we have a chazaka that a yid. By the way, we are assuming this person is a shomer Torah mitzvah. But it's not shomer Torah mitzvah. There's no chazaka that's badek, right? Okay. The halacha is straightforward. Comes along the Beit Yosef and he asks the question. He says, whoa, time out. Let me read you the language of the Beit Yosef. Okay. V'im tomar, ki aite lemaskir kaman amai shalinan lay. I don't understand. Why is it that the Shulchan Aruch, which by the way, it's not the Shulchan Aruch, it's actually the Tur said, don't worry, if you can't get a hold of him, there's a chazaka that is baduk. V'lo samchin chazaka. Why don't we sum the chazaka lechatchila? How can we just say b'di evet? Can't get a hold of him. It's okay. Hello, lechatchila. There's a chazaka. Why does it matter? Just say chezkato baduk. Chezkato baduk. Chazaka that was checked. Don't send a text message. You have chazaka. Why is it only if we can't get a hold of him do we rely on chazaka? Why don't we say chazaka from the outset? And guess what Gemara he quotes? Not surprising. Why is it different from our animal? Because what do we say by our animal? We don't, remember we said last couple of weeks, we don't make the guy check for treifot. Right? We say, b'makom nekev nakav. That where did this zav, where did he puncture? We don't say he punctured in a pre-existing hole. Rather, what do we say? That his hole was created on its own. And therefore, it's not a treifa, and you're allowed to eat it. Chezkato, that's, remember, nishchata, harehi bechezkat heter, achiva delachad nitrafa. How come we don't say chezkato baduk?
Because of the animal, we have to rely on a chazaka. There's no way to know if it punctured, actually know if they punctured the hole or if it's an existing hole or not. We have no way of knowing. With the bedikas, we can find out.
So because it's the case, you're saying we have an ability to find out. So you're saying if we had an ability to find out, that's what we should say. That's what we should do by our Gemara.
I would think we should.
So why does the Gemara say chezkato baduk? Why doesn't it say im efshar levarer? Tavarer. It doesn't say that. It says, no, chazkato, that's fine. Chazkato kshera.
How would you ever find that out? If the wolf is coming on, it's...
How could I find out if there was a pre-existing hole from beforehand?
Once the wolf's coming on, there's no way to go back and check.
How come I'll tell you, we don't say, I'll even give you a bigger chiddush. Halacha. If I do shechita on an animal, and I check my sakin, what's the halacha? Do I have to check for the simani trefot? No. What's the chazaka? It says here, nishchata cheskat heter ad shivadelcha b'nitreva. I don't need to then, wait a second, I have to check all the simani and trefot? No. Meaning, I could, I don't need to, because what it says in our Gemara, the moment you did shechita, it was a good shechita, I cut the kana, I cut the vesher, I did it properly, I did the shechita, kosher, chazaka. We don't. So it's a bigger. Forget the wolf case, right? That's a bigger chiddush. That once you do shechita, there's a chazaka that it's okay. We don't say, wait, check every single one. Right? So we do it. But we don't need to. It says here nishchita, and by the way, this is all true. We saw. What did we say last week about human being? When Reuven murders Shimon, remember this? We don't say we didn't. I don't know. You weren't. Oh no, you heard this 2 weeks ago, right? We assume he's not a treifa. We don't say, great lawyer, you defended him properly. We have to check to see if he was a treifa. Let's do an autopsy. We don't say that. So we see from here that there's chazaka. Okay, good question though. So that's even bigger question than Zav. We put a guy to death and we rely on the chazaka. Okay, so sorry. Let me correct myself. We rely on Rov. Okay, not chazaka, it's rov. Because rov human beings are neither. We have no reusa, right? But we have reusa in our case, which is why we have to be careful. Okay. So let me read to you. So what? Anyone want to see if you can guess the answer of the Beis Yosef? It's not. It's not that complicated. His answer. I'm going to read it right. How come in our Gemara? What do we say? Chazaka. But in the case of psachim, what do we do? Be mevarer. Pick up the phone, go and find him. What might be the difference why in Psachim we are going to make him, or not make him, we're going to request of him to at least try Mimavarer, whereas in our Gemara, in either case, no, we don't need to. Why? Well, that's interesting. That is very interesting because of kares. Okay, interesting. I never thought of that actually.
What would be the punishment for eating?
No, it's a lav. You eat food that's not kosher. Don't get me wrong. You're right. You're right. No, lav, then you cannot compare lav to kares, right? Okay, good. Interesting. Okay, there's more lamdish answer based on the context of the case. What's the difference between? I'm going to let's go through this for a second. Why do they do bedikas chametz? I realized, I was here last year.
Because it says so.
Really? No, it doesn't say so. The rice with the bedikas chametz?
This is like a Mara.
It's not the rice. It's Rabbanan. It's the Gemara says it's the Rabbanan that you should do it. Go back a few days in this guy's house. Let's go back. Let's travel back in time. What was the status of this guy's house? Chametz. So says the Beis Yosef. I'll tell you the difference.
Transition.
V'yeshlam deshani behema. Behema is bechazkat kshira mishanoda. Do I have to assume I have a treifa in an animal?
No, but you have to assume that the house was once.
Avabayikol shana bechazkat she'eno baduku. If you go back a week in time, my animal was not. There's no reason for me to assume my animal's a treifa. Most animals are not. It's walking around. It's mooing nicely, right? But my house a week before had a chazaka of chametz, filled with chametz. So that's what. And by the way, this will be very important because otherwise, if not, we have a chazaka that this animal is fine. It's not eno treifa. Whereas my house clearly is chazaka eno baduk. So therefore, you should be mevarer. By the house, you don't need mevarer by the treifa. Okay, so I need that. The Bach, he says something a little different.
But then that also raises the question: how can you assume that he did the big because if you can't ask him?
So it's a very good question. We assume that Jews do what they're supposed to do. Yeah. Chazaka is baduk. Yeah. Again, by the way, you asked a good question. Maybe you could, since it's a karet, the guy realized if I'm selling my house to an Orthodox Jew on Erev Pesach, I'm going to sell to an Orthodox Jew with chametz in the house? Are you kidding me? That's like...
I know it says...
Who's going to do that?
You have to check.
Yeah.
But
What was that?
It says... I think it specifically says if it's an Amaritz, you have to check.
Yeah, okay, right. Okay, again. But again, Orthodox Jews going to, it's like these like Pesach homes, right? I'm selling you my Pesach home. You're going to show up in our Pesach. My house will be filled with chametz. I mean, he'd sue me. I don't know.
Go to my friend's house, I assume they checked.
Yeah. I think that's... So, what was that?
You see someone here for like a halacha based.
Halachically, right? You assume you're buying a Pesach home and it's filled with chametz. So, I mean, it's not yours. It has to be...
For
anyways.
return, there's more chametz.
Yeah, doesn't matter if it's in your... Anyways, that was last year's topic, so let's go on. But I'll just read to you the Bach. Let me just see what he said. A little different. Where'd the Bach go? Oh, here it is. A little different. Chazak anybody. קודם זמן עבודי. עדיין יש לו זמן לבדוק ולא עבוד דרך חכמים. Oh, that's it. The Bach says that you need to do, when it comes to a Bedikat Chametz requires a Maisa. Meaning, let's assume in both cases, everyone's passive. So if you're passive, your animals will go... Why should... Being passive doesn't mean that your animal's a treifa. Being passive means the animal's fine. But if you're passive on this house, then it's in a baduk. Because we brought chametz in the house last week. So it's similar, a little different. The Bach just highlights this idea that since I demand of a person to be active, you can't always assume people are active. People, by nature, obviously, are usually passive. That's human nature. Humans don't like working too hard. So if a human doesn't work too hard, he did the shechita. That's what he has to do, and that's it. That's fine. But since here, by b'dikas chametz, a person has to be active, we don't assume people are active. That's the Bach. Okay, similar idea, but okay. That was just a connecting last year to this year. I thought that was pretty neat. You can't do that too often, so I didn't want to pass up that opportunity. Okay, let's go now inside the Gemara. It's actually, I think you're allowed to learn Gemara. So Daf Tet at the bottom. Daf Tet at the bottom. Bottom 2 lines. Second last line from the bottom. Okay, that's what we got up to. Esvei. So now, we've assumed, hey, what do you mean? Our conclusion is, lo b'makom nekev nakav, and now we assume is a wonderful kosher cow, wonderful kosher animal. We're not worried that the Zav came, took it away, and punctured in the spot. Rather, there was no treif at all. The Gemara says, wait a second. Time out. And this, by the way, gentlemen, leads to a fascinating conversation, which is why this is a great sugya. And major modern day implications to it, which are worthwhile. We'll be touching on. I'll get to all of them today, but if not, then I actually want to deal with that also next week because it's worthwhile. You'll see why. Hey, so here we go. Ra'a tzipor hamenaker b'te'ena. So a person sees a bird. Menakir is a pecking, right? A guy is pecking. Right? At a te'ena, a fig. Or, v'achbar hamenaker ba'avatichim. Or a mouse, or some type of rodent. Not a mouse, a rodent, what? Rat, but some people say an achbar. Modern day Hebrew is, but some people say an achbar isn't a mouse, but it's what's that type of rodent in that family?
It says mouse here.
It says mouse? It does. Anyways, in the mouse family. What? Anyways, in the achbar, right? It comes around to shut around your chametz. My goodness, what's wrong with me? What's another name for like those a mouse?
Rat, mole.
A rat, a mole.
Bull.
Hamster.
No, hamster.
Start
So
listing
like
off
a possum or
rodents.
something?
Possum.
Guinea pig.
Guinea pig. No, it's not
Show
a
off.
name for it. Anyways, okay, whatever. Okay, mouse. Again, that's nibbling at a so get watermelon. Some type of vegetable. We are worried that maybe it is biting into a place that a previous hole. What in the world is it talking about? Take a look at the Rashi. What is it referring to? Shel nachash nakav. Aser mishum sakana nefashot. What are we worried about here? We're worried that a snake came along on Tuesday, bit with its venom into this fruit, this vegetable, this whatever it may be, left a mark. The next day, a mouse, a rodent, whatever the case is, comes and now bites in the exact same location as the venom was inserted a day earlier. So, says what does this Brisa say? If you see, so again, you see a bird pecking on it, or an achbar, chosheshin shemakam nagav. Now, this seems to contradict our Gemara. Because what did we conclude in our Gemara? We're not choshesh shemakam nagav. How can we say here, la choshesh shemakam nagav?
Could we keep track of the mouse and see if it kills over?
That's a very good question. Why don't we just wait? Let's see what happens to... So, the truth is, what are we worried about?
Poison.
The snake poison didn't.
You were the snake poison did. So why can't now? I guess a different standards in those days. Today I think if most people saw a bird or an animal touch it, they wouldn't eat it anymore. Okay, but we live in those days different. I guess you can maybe carve that out, even if you're. But we're worried, I guess, that there's venom mamash inserted into the rest of the fruit, of the vegetable. So we're not allowed to eat it. Look, there's a contradiction.
Not really. The cow's not going to kill you.
So, but how come if we're choshesh for one, why are we choshesh for the other? I don't eat this apple. Don't eat this pomegranate.
Potentially dangerous.
So, dangerous. Have non-kosher food is also dangerous.
It will kill you.
So death is. Death. So what does the Gemara say? Very good. Amar, what are you talking about? Meaning the contradiction is a real contradiction. We're choshesh b'makom nekev nakav. But the reason why we are more stringent when it comes to piercing, that perhaps the tzipor, maybe the bird pecked at a previous hole, why are we more concerned that he's pecking at a hole which was inserted with venom the previous day? The reason is because mikamidamid isur l'sakanta sakana shani. When it comes to sakana, by the way, this is not sakana like, danger. This is like, what type of sakana is it? Nefashot. We're talking about a human being could die here. When it comes to a sakana nefashot, very machmir. We're not going to say there's a chazaka b'makom nekev nakav. We're not choshesh for that. Chazaka, that is shchuta properly, eat the cow. But when it comes to venom, when it comes to poison, by the way, what are the odds? What do you think the odds are of the bird pecking in a hole that yesterday a poisonous snake bit into and inserted venom?
I'd say lower than the wolf biting into the existing hole.
I mean, that's like, what are the odds? Nope, you're not allowed to eat that apple.
But it's an apple.
Couldn't you check if the animal died after eating it?
So that's what Josh said. It's a good question. So I guess you'd have to say. By the way, maybe we could say that maybe the bird bit into it and flew away. So yes, maybe it'll die in 10 minutes, but the bird's gone now. Yeah. It's like animal experimentation. You know what I mean? Like taste it, have the animal eat it, see what happens to it.
How fast the venom kills it. If it kills it immediately, then you get checked.
Right. Like Snow White, right? She bit the apple and she. But the truth is, it's a good. But also the question is, sometimes we know venom. Maybe, again, I don't know these things. Does venom affect humans different than animals? Maybe.
Mouse probably not.
Mouse probably not, right?
Yeah, and they test on rodents all the time because it reacts somewhat
Similar to a human being.
She experiments.
So you have to do an experiment. You
Birds
have
might
to do an
be
experiment of an
able to
experiment.
Who wants to volunteer?
So, okay, you have to do an experiment to see if poison, reaction of a human to poison versus an animal to
Kill
poison.
an animal faster.
Probably, it's not strong. Anyways, let's assume that maybe the bird flew away and we won't be able to, watch it and follow it if it does or not. So, the Gemara immediately says, how can you make such a comparison? We are much more machmer when it comes to sakana nefashot than it comes to eating a non-kosher food. So by non-kosher food, we have a principle called chazaka, that is sufficient. When it comes to sakana nefashot, we will be much more machmer. And we know what's the source of machmer by sakana nefashot? The pasuk says, "V'nishmartem ma'od lenafshotechem." So even though the context is referring to avodah zarah, nonetheless, Chazal expanded that to all areas. Right? Again, eat healthy and be healthy, and I'm always shocked by that because I was in the hospital on Monday. I was driving around. I was in the hospital, and I saw no fewer. Just when I was driving for 10 seconds in the backside of the hospital, just to pull out 4 people who are in the medical profession smoking. It's like shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Right? I think it's something that applies to Jew, non-Jew, right? Doesn't matter. And look what the way... Anyways, those things still surprise me today. Okay, let's go to the Gemara. So the Gemara says, you're saying that we can't compare an Isser to a Sakana? Really? Says the Gemara. Amar le Rava. Wait a second. Ma'ishna safek sakanta l'chumra safek isura nami l'chumra. Comes on Rava and says, wait a second. Why is there a difference when we have a safek sakana we're machmir, safek isura we should also be machmir? Meaning he's questioning this entire premise of a safek. Again, both cases are safek. We don't know. No one can say that, for certain there was venom. There's no one can say for certain the zev appears. He says, why is it that in one area we're machmir? Because we know, by the way, but we know there's certain principles, right? For example, when it comes to money, motzi machavaro alavaraya, right? One principle is we know that safek mentioned brachos, safek brachos, all these principles that we throw out there, right? One of them is safek isura l'kula, safek sakana remachmer. So the question that Rava is asking is, why is it that the safek of sakana we're more machmer for? After all, he says, Amar Rabbi, what's the source for it? V'lo shani ben isura l'sakanta, right? And he says, no, we shouldn't make such a distinction between the two. Why not? He's going to explain. V'ha ilu safek tuma b'rshus harabim svegodor. V'lu safek mayim agulim asurin. Okay. Let me explain this for a second. What would happen? So there's a concept in halacha called mayim agulim. Mayim agulim means water that was left out. Now, water that was left out overnight, we're worried that maybe a snake came in and deposited venom in your cup of water, and therefore don't drink your cup of water because maybe there's poison in there. Now, what are the odds of that happening?
Not very good.
Not very good. So first of all, maybe we'll talk a little about this next week. What about in the year 2015, living in Toronto, I haven't really seen a poisonous steak in a very long time.
Especially in my house.
Yeah, especially in your house.
Or just sneaking into the house. It's told the Jew.
What was that? In the Torah Technology Challenge poisonous. That was in Israel, I think. Yes, right? And maybe it was a scam. It really wasn't poisonous steak. Maybe it was a case. Maybe he tricked them to make some money. So it's not an everyday occurrence. In fact, if it's not forget it. It's not an everyday occurrence. It's a never occurrence, ever. So do we have to be choshesh for that today? Topic for another time. But excuse me. We are machmir by safek mayim agulim, meaning, you're right. I left it open. I was sleeping. I had a good night's sleep. I slept for at least 5 hours. I don't know if venom was deposited or not. We're machmir, spill it out. However, when it comes to Savik Tuma Bershus HaRabim, Svegos Tahor. Let me explain what that is. If I have, I don't know if a person came in contact with a dead body. Safek. Forget Kohanim. Talking about Tzad Beis Midrash, right? Forget Kohanim for now. But I don't know. Are you Safek? Are you now Tameh? You're Safek Tahor. Meaning, I know that they were dead bodies. It was dark. I don't know if I came in contact with them, if I came in close proximity to them, or if whatever it is. I don't know. So again, Safek Tuma Bershus HaRabim Tahor. If you're walking down the street, Rahman al-Islam, you're walking in Paris, right? You're walking around, and you don't know if you came in contact with a dead body. If it was in Rishus HaRabim, it was in a public thoroughfare, Tahor. If, however, you were in a private home and the room was dark, I don't know if I came in contact with a dead body. It was pitch black. If it's a Safek Tuma B'Reshus HaYachid, Tameh. So, what's the Gemara's question? The Gemara's question is the following. Wait a second. You want to tell me that we don't make a difference between Isura and Sakanta? Wait a second. We do. Because Safek Tuma in Reshus HaRabim is, which by the way is in Isura, is Svego Tahor. And Safek Maimagulin is Asurim. So what do we see? That yes, we see here's a distinction between Sakana and between Isura. So don't try and say that they're the same. I'm going to prove to you that Sakana and Isura are different. Right? And how? And uses our case. Of what? Maimagulim and Safek Tuma Reshus HaRabim. How come Safek Tuma B'Reshus HaRabim we see is Tahor? Ma'imagulim is Asur, you can't drink it. So we see, no, there is a distinction between the two. If there's a distinction between the two, then I can say Makum Nekev Nakav and Bichoshesh by my bird, by the snake, because that's the Sakana. And I'll be Mekel when it comes to the wolf piercing the Bnei Me'ayim. He says, no, you cannot make such a distinction. You cannot learn from Safek Tuma B'Reshus HaRabim that is governed by different laws. Why not? I will tell you why not. Hilchos HaGemirah. Hilchos HaGemirah. We see that in the Gemara means that is, there's some type of limud from Halacha Moshe Misinai. What are we learning from Halacha Moshe Misinai? Misota. Masota B'Reshus HaYachid, Aftuma B'Reshus HaYachid. Okay, stop. What is this saying? I gotta explain. What do we learn from in Isha Sota? In order for a woman to be charged being a Sota, there has to be something against her. In a Reshus HaYachid, Reshus HaRabim. In a Reshus HaYachid. If a woman is caught hanging out with a man on Bathurst Street, alone, that's not in Shasota. She has to seclude herself with a man. And that means you seclude yourself, it has to be in a Reshus HaYachid. And if a man and a woman seclude themselves and were choshesh for znus, then in such a case we have an Isha Sota. Where do we learn this principle from? Halacha Moshe Misinai, that's what Isha Sota is. Isha Sota applies only in the case of Reshus HaYachid. Reshus HaRabim, there's no Isha Sota. Hilchos HaGemirah. Therefore, now, what does it do with anything? So let's read. Ma Sota B'Reshus HaYachid, Aftuma B'Reshus HaYachid. Meaning that since this whole idea, and the Gemara learns from Isha Sota, is because she's nitme'ah. How is she nitme'ah? Because she secluded herself with this guy. And where she did it, Reshus HaYachid. The whole concept of Tuma and Tahara, of Reshus HaYachid, and Reshus HaRabim is learned from an Isha Sota. And that Tuma, Reshus HaRabim is Sfeiko Tahor. Safek Reshus HaYachid, Sfeiko Tameh. By the way, Isha Sota is all about Safek, right? I don't know if she did this, we can bring charges against her and assume she did. Right? That's otherwise that's talk about if we know she did. So this I want to explain this because it's a little complicated. The Rashba says, well, what's going on here? When I want to learn something, halacha Moshe Misinai, how much can I extrapolate from other areas? Meaning, what's the chiddush in this limud? So what do you think is the bigger chiddush? That a tuma, safek tuma b'rishus hayachid is tameh? Or is the bigger chiddush safek tuma b'rishus harabim is mutter? What do you think? So yeah, I have a safek, I don't know if it became tameh. What's the bigger chiddush? If it's a rishus, excuse me, if it's in rishus harabim, rishus hayachid, and why? What would you say? What's the bigger? I mean, what's the chiddush of the Torah by Isha Sota? What do you think is the bigger novelty?
You're more likely to come into contact with Tuma and Rishus Harabim.
Because
there's more people. They're everywhere and you don't know them as well.
So the fact that we say Safek Tuma b'Rishus Harabim, Sfeiko Tahor is a chiddush.
Right.
Because there's more
probability.
Therefore, you should say Sfeiko Tame. The chiddush is that it's Tahor.
But then the thing is that you always have a Safek in Rishus Harabim because there's people everywhere and you don't know them.
Doesn't this align with our senior kind of? In that,
How?
That originally she's tahor, so are you moving her into the bigger chiddush is to move her into the chazaka that she's tameh, as opposed to keeping her in the chazaka that she's tameh?
I don't understand. A person is a woman, a human being, has a chazaka the Torah. How can I challenge the chazaka? So is Rishus Harabim. So was their body. But chazaka is the Torah. The fact, but we see here, you can't challenge it. But when can you only challenge it? In Rishus HaYachid. In Rishus HaRab. Now, the question is why? What was the logic behind the Rishus HaYachid where Sfeiko is Tameh, whereas in Rishus HaRabim Sfeiko is Tahor? Why is that? What's the rationale for this Halacha Moshe Misinai? That will make a distinction and will be more machmir in a Rishus HaYachid. Why?
Rishus HaYachid, if there's a suffix, you assuming
by Tuma, Safek Tuma.
Yeah, assuming that there was Tuma, you definitely came in contact with it.
Okay, we don't know definite. We're gonna be machmir say Safek because we're in doubt. If we're definite, there's no
definitely came in contact with the suffix, like whatever it was, because Yachid is such close quarters.
So we're saying this. So again, it's a suffix that came in contact with the body. We don't know. And you're saying that you're more likely to come in contact with it because it's a smaller area. Whereas Rishus HaRabim, it's open. Yeah.
If you're in Rishus HaRabim, someone will likely have seen you and then therefore have come in aid for you, and therefore it would be Vadai. But the fact that it is, the fact that no one has come.
But I have an aid, that's better, but I don't have that.
I'm saying, so the fact that no one is, meaning there's a better chance of someone seeing you in Rishus HaRabim, and therefore a less chance of being a suffix. And if you are a suffix in Rishus HaRabim, then it would make more sense to say that you're tahor because no one would have seen you. No, someone would have seen you otherwise.
So it's about, and I need someone to see me.
I mean, how else?
I need edus on where I was and what I was doing. Who I spoke to, who I came in contact with. Ooh, I started speaking to him. He died. So, I think what Josh is saying, I think is maybe what's going on here. That what's the rationale for Rishus HaYachid being machmir and safek tuma? Because the tuma is contained in Rishus HaYachid. By the way, what's the definition of Rishus HaYachid? You gotta have walls, right? Okay, a roof, a gag, but you definitely need to be able to a contained area, right? So how do we carry in Toronto? That's a different question. Oh, the clothes on your roof and speak to them, right? But that's so if we have Rishus Yachid, a person is Sefeko Tameh. Now, here is, I think, an important methodology when we're actually learning. What do I mean? The methodology here is an important one. How far, when we have a Chiddush Ladina, because remember, Halacha Moshe Sinai is a Chiddush Ladina. It's a Chiddush. I wouldn't necessarily been able to. Why? Because I would have assumed, and I think this is important, a guy is a Chazaka that he's Tahor. Why should I assume that just because there's a dead body in a house, he's not Tameh? The guy's a Chazaka. He's a Chazaka that he's Tahor. And now I'm going to say, Sefeko Tameh. Why? Chazaka is Tahor. The Chiddush of Sota is, we're going to say such an individual is Sefeko Tameh. Chiddush. But only extrapolate to Rishus Yachid. Not the Rishus Rabbi. Now, here's the question though. Because remember, this is what the Gemara wants to do. The Gemara wants to say, can we do the following? Can we say that since the Gemara makes a distinction between, again, Safek Tuma in Rishus Harabim, we're saying the guy's Tahor, we're Mekel, my Megulim, we're Machmir. Can we use this as the example of, what do we learn from here? We're Machmir by Sakana, we're Mekel by an Isser. Therefore, Makom Nekav Nakav by Isser will be Mekel, by Sakana will be Machmir. The Gemara says you can't do that. You cannot extrapolate from Sota. And the question is, why not? Answer, because of Hilchasa Gemirala, because there's a Chidush L'Din. What does the Gemara mean to say? What is the Chidush L'Din? So the Rashba says the following. The Rashba says, that if I don't have Hilchasa Gemirala, then I can never use the example of Sota because it's such a Chiddush. Meaning, I would assume Safek Tuma anywhere is Lakula, Safek Isura is also Lakula. I would but because it's such a Chiddush, since this Hilchasa Gemirala, the rule is when you have a Chiddush, can you learn anything from a Chiddush? No. Meaning, I can't say, oh yeah, because there's a Chiddush L'Din here, therefore we see that the Torah sometimes is Megil or Machmir. But the answer is, it's contained. Meaning, you might have thought that you want to use the language of Safek Tuma, Birishus, Harabim. We are Megil. By Sakana or Machmir, we see there's a difference between the two. By Isura / Tuma and Sakana, no. You cannot draw anything from Sota. Not Machmir, not Mekil. Not Rishusa Yachid, meaning not Rishusa Yachid that Sfeiko is Tameh, and not Rishusa Rabim that Sfeiko is Mutter. Why not? Because the entire package, that's what Rashba seems to say here, that the entire package of learning from Sota is such a Chiddush L'Din, even though I would have naturally assumed that Safek Tuma B'Rishusa Rabim is Tahor, because the guy's a Chazaka, but since I'm learning it and including with it Isha Sota, that in Rishusa Yachid is Tameh, even though I have a Chazaka, the moment I'm bringing in an Isha Sota to this equation, which contains a Chiddush, it's true that maybe the bigger Chiddush isn't Rishusa Rabim, but it doesn't matter because it's coupled with Rishusa Yachid. You cannot learn anything from Isha Sota. And therefore, we go back to our original point, is why is it that by Makom Nekev Nakav, by the Shchita case, we're Mekil, by the Ze'ev, and by the bird venom case, by the mouse poison case, we are Machmer. So we thought we can say, I'll tell you where we prove it from, Isha Sota, Safek Tuma, Rishusa Rabim is Tahor. There we are lenient. There we are Mako. There we don't take the easy route, and we say it's fine. We can't extrapolate from there and see that it's different when it comes to venom. Because Hilchas Gemara law, we can't learn anything from Sota. It's an isolated incident. So the Gemara now will have to try and find another case to make a distinction between that Sakana. We know that Sakana is more machmir. The question is, where do we know it from? What's its source that we can make a distinction and not see as a contradiction that we still have to find another example of? The example of Safek Tuma, Reshus Harabim, is not a good example from Sota. Whew. Okay, was that clear? Yeah. Question? Comment? I want to make sure that it's a lot. One more time. Yeah, one more time. Okay. So the Gemara said that we want to understand that that Malkum Nekav Nakav by Ze'ev or Mako. That we say no. We have a Chazaka. We don't assume that the Malkum Nekav Nakav, and therefore you can still eat this beautiful, delicious cow. The Gemara says, wait a second. I'll give you a case that we are choshesh for Makom Nekev Nakav. And when is that? When a tzipor, when a little birdie comes, pecks on a fig, pecks on a watermelon, pecks on a fruit, it doesn't really matter. What are we worried? That maybe it pecked. I shouldn't say it pecked on a fruit or a vegetable in the exact same location that yesterday a snake came and inserted its venom, and in that same hole the bird is now pecking at. We are choshesh, we can't. The Gemara says, okay, it's not a contradiction. We're not, because why are we choshesh Malkum Nekav Nakav? We're choshesh because it's sakana, and sakana is more machmir than isura. Where do we know this from? Let's go to Isha Sota. Maybe we can learn this principle from Isha Sota. That why? I'll give you an example. Isha Sota, Safek Tuma, Bereshus Harabim, Mako. If we have, so again, the principle that is learned from Isha Sota is that if a woman secludes herself with a man other than her husband in a public domain, she's not charged with being an Isha Sota. If a woman does this, seclude herself in a private domain, she's an Isha Sota. I get this, by the way, an Isha Sota is based on a Safek. We don't know. We're Machmir in Reshus Yachid. We don't charge her in Reshus Harabim. And from here, we extrapolated to a principle of Allah Moshe Misinai, this is Isha Sota, and then it's extrapolated to the concept of Safek Tuma B'Reshus Harabim or Mako. We learn that from an Isha Sota, because she's not an Isha Sota B'Reshus Harabim. As opposed to, in order to be an Isha Sota, that's Reshus Yachid. So Safek Tuma B'Reshus Yachid, we're Machmir. So the Gemara says, here's an example. If Safek Tuma B'Reshus Harabim were Mako, Safek Isura B'Reshus Harabim were Machmir. Where? Mayi Magulim. If you leave water out overnight, even in a public domain, we are worried that a snake will come and deposit its venom in that cup of water. And therefore it's Mayi Magulim, you cannot drink from it. So we see from here that when it comes to an Isser, we are Mekil, meaning Safek Tuma B'Reshus Harabim, Safek Sakana B'Reshus Harabim, meaning I don't know if the snake deposited venom into this cup. I cannot drink this cup of water. Safek Sakana B'Reshus Harabim, we are Machmir. Safek Isser / Tuma B'Reshus Harabim, we are Meko. We see here, there's a distinction. We make a distinction. If we can make a distinction there, I understand why. But Malkum Nekav Nakav, when it comes to depositing venom the day before, we can be Machmir because it's Sakana. My Magulim, we're Machmir by Sakana. We're Mekil by Tuma / Isura. The Gemara says you can't extrapolate because the entire package of Tuma, of an Isha Sota, that whole package is a Chidush Ladina. So you can't say, oh yes, no. In Isha Sota, meaning Tuma, why? What's the rationale? This is the Gemara doesn't say. We said it. Take a look, gentlemen. Let's see Rashi inside 2:4, the fourth line. Hilchata Gemir Lamisota. Remember, it's a halacha Moshe. It's a chiddush ledina. D'Bershusa Rabbi Sveikotar. That in a public domain, the suffix is tahor. V'gzera rakatufu. Don't start telling me that it's rational. It's not. Just because maybe he transgressed. So we see from here that you need. Actually, he doesn't. I thought he had brought three. So I wonder where I got that from. The chazaka? I don't know. But there's a chazaka here. Meaning, we are the chiddush ledina of sota. Maybe it's the Rashba. The chiddush ledina of sota is very simple. I have a chazaka, the guy's tahor. And what are we going to say? That she's all of a sudden v'nitma'a. We're going to say that she's metamed herself in a reshus yachid. It's irrational. She's a chazaka that she's tahora. Same idea. Safek isur b'reshusa Rabim Sveikotor. That's rational. So you might think I could cut it and say, since there's no chiddush, maybe I can't extrapolate it. The Gemara says, no. The entire package of an Isha Sota, of Tuma, Reshusa Rabim, or Reshusa Yachid is the chiddush ledina. It goes all together. You cannot extrapolate one from the other. Therefore, we are still left with what appears to be a contradiction between two braitas. Or not. In one case we say we are, one case we say we're not. What is the source to argue that by suffix sakana or machmir? We haven't found that source. To make that distinction, we still have to find that source.
Clarify.
Yeah.
Isha Sota is an exception to the norm.
In Isha, so in Isha, we learn from Isha Sota that Tuma b'Reshusa Yachid is
right.
We're machmir, and Safek Tuma Reshusa Rabim, we are Mekel. That is a chiddush. Why? Because I would assume if you're Tahor, is a chazaka Tahor. Right. What does it matter if you're on bathhouse or if you're in a private room? You have a chazaka that you're Tahor. Whether it's doing with dead bodies
people are
or people are Tahor. The chazaka that people are Tahor. Right?
At least then.
At least then. Right. By the way, actually, that's a very... you actually ask a very good question, because this does have ramification of Hilchot Yichud. Because if a guy is does not have a chazaka that he's, shall we say, a upstanding citizen, maybe even having 3 men secluded with a woman is yichud if, shall we say, they have a suspicious past. Sorry, that's not for now. But okay, so that's where we're okay. Rabbi Elon's going to share in 5 minutes, so we'll stop there, and then next week we'll see the Gemara's source, and that'll take us. The truth is, it's a quick. We'll get the end of the Amud. What's the source for making that distinction? We'll talk a little bit about modern day sakanas, if we're choshesh for them or not. Just worthwhile to do a little bit.